Assalamu alaikum. Have a good day. Welcome to Financial Management eLearning. We are going to discuss business ethics, corporate governance, and business law. So we are in Module 10 of ethical conflict. It is the continuations of previous modules. So today we will discuss ethical conflict resolution, the CIFRS Code of Ethics for Professional Accountant, and the fundamental principle. So ethical conflict resolution, the evaluating compliance with the fundamental principle, a professional accountant may be required to resolve a conflict in the either a formal or informal conflict resolution process. A professional accountant should consider the ethic individuals are together. That means we have to consider the relevant fact and ethical issues involved, fundamental principles relating to the matters in questions, establish internal process, and alternative course of action. So we have to consider these all things, resolution of conflict. So a professional accountant may be required to resolve the conflict of complying with the fundamental principles. That is, we have to consider the ethical issue involved. We know ethical issues involves the fundamental principle related to the matter, establish internal procedure, alternative course of action have to consider, and relevant fact have to consider. All of this we have to consider for ethical conflict. So having considered these issues, a professional accountant should determine the appropriate course of action that is consistent with the fundamental principle identified. So the professional accountant should also weigh the consequence of each possible course of action. If the matter remains unresolved, the professional accountant should consult with other appropriate persons within the firm or employee and organization or to help to obtain the resolution. So, when a matter is involved or conflict with or within an organization, the professional accountant should also consider consulting this charge with the governance of the organization, such as the board of directors or the audit committee of that organization. So it's the responsibility for professional accountant. The practical matter, the resolution process entails several stages of investigation. The relevant fact need to be established. The ethical issue are identified. Is the issue as against the fundamental principle and code of ethics. So once the relevant fact has been ascertained, then a course of action will need to be identified. Option may be do nothing, avoidance, modifying behaviors, arbitration. So do nothing, what have to do? That means sometimes it is impossible to ascertain, to verify fact. Here example is that when there is a dispute over matters discussed in a telephonic call or mobile between two parties, in such an instant it may not be possible, nothing can be done. And avoidance, when a dispute has arisen in which both parties are involved. For instance, it might be prudent to separate them, introducing an intermediary through whom they will work through avoiding direct conflict between the parties. That time we should follow the avoidance. and modifying behaviors. Sometimes it is to be necessary to suggest the individuals modify or adjust their behavior towards others. So, arbitration. In difficult and complex situation, the professional accountant might wish to seek the advice or assistance of a professional mediator. That means need the arbitration. This might happen when the allegation of a more serious matter, such as bullying and harassment of one colleague by another, but there is no third party. Preparation for handling investigations, internal procedure for handling such dilemma need to have established so that they can be referred to. During the course of such investigation, the professional accountant may well need to be referred or discuss the issue with others within the organization. All investigation should be documented in case any suggested action had to be taken, as should all conversation have held in connection with the issue. Where there is requirement, the report, such as the cases of suspected or identified fraud, the professional accountant should obtain legal advice. In many organizations, the procedure laid down for resolving ethical issues refers to pre-initial test for an ethical decision. So, what are the threats to compliance with the fundamental principles of integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidence, professional behavior? It is the question. So how have you considered the following threats? Self-interest, self-review, advocacy, familiarity, initiation. If so, there is threat to compliance with the fundamental principle clearly insignificant. Are there safeguards, eliminated or reduce the threat to an acceptable level? Safeguard can be created by professional legislation and regulation, work environment, individual. So it can be questioned how to resolve ethical problems. First, have to gather the relevant fact and identify the problems. Identify the affected parties. Consider the ethical issues involved. Identify which fundamental principles are affected. Refers to the employing organization internal procedure. Consider and evaluate alternatives course of action. Implement the course of action and monitor its progress. It is the resolving process. It is the process of resolving the ethical problems. Now, the CIFRS Code of Ethics for professional accountant, fundamental principle. It is also the IFRS Code of Ethics. Okay, as an accountant, we have to follow this code of ethics. So this code of ethics, the three part A, this is the general applicable of all code. For all accountant, all professional accountant should be follow this general applicable code. It is the part A. And part B, professional accountant in public practice. The accountant who are in practicing, they have to follow the part B. And part C, it is the professional accountant in business who are in serving, who are in business, who are in serving, all have to follow the part C. So, what is part A? General applicable of the code. This code established for fundamental principles of professional ethics for professional accountant. It also provides a conceptual framework that they shall use to identify, evaluate, and apply safeguard to estimate threats to compliance with the fundamental principle. This is applicable for all accountants. So professional accountant in public practice, if you see here, this professional accountant in public practice and describe how the conceptual framework applies in certain situations. It provides example of safeguard and may be appropriate to address threat to compliance with the fundamental principles. It so describes situation where safeguards are not available to address the threat, and consequently the circumstance of relationship creating the threat shall be avoided. So professional accountant who are in practice, they should be follow the part B is for the professional accountant practice. And professional accounting in business, C applies to professional accounting in business and describe how the conceptual framework applies in certain situation. Part C is the code was developed in the cooperation with the CPFA, and like part A and B, the elements of the update part C which applied to all members of the professional accountant and its students also. So now fundamental principles in the course. Fundamental principles are integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. So integrity, being straightforward, honest, and truthful. Do not be associated with any information that you believe contains a materiality false or misleading statement. Objectivity, not allowing the bias, conflict of interest, or the influence of other people to override your professional judgment. Professional competence and due care, ongoing commitment to level up professional knowledge skill based on current development in practice, regulation, and techniques. Ensure appropriate training and supervision for those working under your authority. And confidentiality, do not disclose professional information unless you have a specific permission or a legal or professional duty to do so. And professional behavior, comply with relevant laws and regulation. Avoid any action that could negatively affect the reputation of the profession. So, it is the fundamental principles for an accountant: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. Okay, so ethical checklist we can see here. Check all your fact. Is it ethical? Have to consider the ethical issue involved. It is legal? If yes, identify which fundamental principles are affected. If after that, identify the affected parties, then possible course of action have to identify. The possible course of action have to take. Then seek the professional or legal advisor or refuse to remain associated with the conflict. So it is the ethics checklist. Okay. So threat. The code identifies 5 categories of common threat to the 5 principles. One is self-interest, another is self-review, then advocacy, then familiarity, then intervention. So self-interest threat, commonly called a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is the self-interest threat. Self-review threat, when you require to evaluate the result of the previous judgment or service. Advocacy threat, arising if promoting a position or opinion of the point that your subsequent objective is compromise. Familiarity threat and intimation threat. Now safeguard. This code has a threat and safeguard approach to resolve ethical issues. This means that if you think there is a threat, you should assess where the threat is significant, then take action to remove or mitigate it. It offers a defense mechanism in the form of safeguard, that when educational training and experience requirement for entry into the profession, continuing professional development requirement, corporate governance guidelines, regulation have to follow, professional standards should be maintained, and professional regulatory monitoring and disciplinary procedure should be taken, and external review by the legal empowerment third parties of the reports, returns, communication, or information produced by a professional accountant. This list of safeguard is not necessarily exclusive. There can be another list also, another point may be, and so employing institutions often have safeguards. Whistleblowing is the safeguard. Or safeguards are also created by the provision, legislation, or regulation. So employing institutions often have safeguards through the whistleblowing. So it's all today. So what we discuss today, we discuss ethical conflict resolution, how to resolve ethical problems, Code of Ethics of CIFRS Professional Accountant, also the Code of IFAC. Part 1, general applicable for the code for the all accountant. Part B, professional accountant of public practice, it is applicable for part B. Part C, professional accountant in business. C, professional accountant in the business, who are in the service or business, they have to follow the part C. And fundamental principles, ethical checklist, threat, safeguard, employing institutions often have safeguards through whistleblowing. So it's all today. We will meet with you again with my next module of business ethics. Till then, take care. Allah Hafiz.